interesting seeing people hype up the monster taming game of the week. Because every single time, no matter what it is, what genre, what developer, whether it's Yokai Watch, Temtem, Pal World, whether it's like Monster Hunter Stories 3, Capcom Level 5, like fucking Digimon from Bandai Namco, like whatever, no matter what it is, like every single time, the narrative is that Nintendo is losing and that like these third parties are winning. Like, oh yeah, Monster Hunter Stories 3, I played the demo and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's way better than the last decade of Pokemon games. And then you like look in the real world and you see like games like Pokepia being these huge, phenomenal success stories, right? You see like how much hype there is around Pokepia, a game that these people have been downplaying all year, by the way. You see how much like enthusiasm there is for Pokemon Day, and you kind of have this realization that like Monster Hunter Stories 3 isn't going to leave much of an impact at all. Like nobody cares about Monster Hunter Stories 3, Like, the fact of the matter is, if you have to hype up a game, a demo of a game, by trying to say that, like, oh yeah, this is way better than Pokemon, you've already lost. Because the game isn't standing on its own merits. You're not talking about the story, the characters, the mechanics. You're not talking about the setting. You're not talking about the future of the franchise. You're not talking about, like, future installments. You're not talking about, like, things you would want to see better, done better in these games, actually. Like, no, you are trying desperately to downplay Pokemon specifically. And this is why you're never going to win. Because you're not really establishing, like, your own brand. You're not really establishing, like, this, you're not really interested in the game itself. You're interested in, like, the illusion that there's very strong competition for Pokemon out there, and it simply isn't true. Like, if you're like me and you've actually played all the Monster Hunter Stories games, if you've played the recent Digimon releases, if you've seen what happened to Yokai Watch, if you've studied the law and know that, like, Pocket Pair is losing the lawsuit and that they're not actually making all that money, like, when you're like me and really look at the situation as a whole, like, Pokemon... The reason Pokemon doesn't have competition isn't just because the product is so much better. It's because they are able to so effectively run their business. So not only are they putting out like new Pokemon games every 3 years, they're also doing spin-offs, they're doing merchandise, they're doing like all this stuff. They're releasing mobile games. They have new tie-in animations outside the mainline anime. They're expanding, they're opening parks, Like, the reason they're able to do this is because the product is so good and because people enjoy it so much. Like, something like Digimon simply doesn't have the same amount of care put into it. And I know, like, the narrative right now is that, like, Game Freak and the Pokemon Company don't maintain the brand and they don't do anything new or interesting. But the simple fact of the matter is that is not true whatsoever. Like, it is something that we really should talk about, that we really do address, that we really should acknowledge, is that, like, Pokemon is just so far ahead of the rest of the industry that there is no catching up to it in that sense, Like, nothing is bigger than Pokemon at this point because they do such a great job of, like, building up brand synergy and having all these different aspects of the brand, like, really build themselves up and really make themselves interesting. Because people want to do this thing where they complain about the video games, and I'm just like, well, you could, like, watch the anime, you could play the card games, you could simply not play the video games if you want, and yet these guys are, like, insisting that, like, yeah, I'm buying these games day one, and I'm having a miserable time, and I'm just like, well, why are you buying them then? That's kind of my question to these people. If you're so upset with Pokemon, if you're not happy with what they're doing, why are you buying the games? And I'll tell you why. It's entirely because they are enjoying the games. They do enjoy Pokemon. They all say they're Pokemon fans, but they do this thing where they have to pretend as if, like, yeah, I'm disappointed with the brand. I have standards. What they need is, like, higher budgets, and they need to look like AAA games, and they need to become something they aren't. They need to become like everyone else, and it's just so short-sighted, ignorant thinking, right? Like, these people don't really understand what they have. and like they don't know how to appreciate it. It's kind of like Star Wars fans, right? You know, people who grew up with the prequels, who love the prequels for what they are, who hype them up, who glaze them. You know, they're low IQ, but whatever. You know, people who love the prequels growing up, or like even the original trilogy, you know, they grew up hating, you know, everything that happened with the follow-up movies, right? You know, they hated the Disney series, they hated the spin-offs, they hated the expanded universe material, they hated like the comic books and like all that. And you know, when you hate something so much but you engage with it, it just becomes this question of like, well, why are you doing this? And the reason for it, obviously, is that you do enjoy it. Because theoretically, if you didn't enjoy Pokemon, you simply wouldn't be buying these games to begin with. You would not be following them. You would not be talking about them. You would not be bringing them up at all. But with the Pokemon hate community, like they always say that like, yo, I've been playing these games like forever, bro. And it's just like, well, okay, so you like playing them. So what's the big deal? Like, no, they started falling off in the past 10 years or so. And then like the issue with that is that you see so many people who are enthusiastic about modern Pokemon, who love modern Pokemon, who love everything the brand is doing now, that like all these people just kind of come off like a vocal minority. You know, if they weren't coming out and like obsessively downplaying everything Pokemon did for every major release, like what you would see is just like this overwhelming consensus that Pokemon is better than ever. You know, we were not getting games like Pokepia 10 years ago. Okay, we did not have Pokemon Trading Card Pocket. Okay, we did not have, we got Pokemon Go 10 years ago. Okay, so that was a big deal then. That was, that was a big deal, 10 years ago. Back in the day, long time ago, like back all when you were very, very young, Pokemon Go was 10 years ago now. So when you take that into consideration, like what you see is that Pokemon is this brand that's constantly growing and evolving. And all of the copes from boomers who want to like pretend it sucks now and that it's not any good, it's all just a giant cope. Because if you actually engage with this brand, if you actually like play the games and experience them, you do end up liking them a lot, and you do spend a lot of time with them. Like, the idea that people have that, like, they should look like AAA games, like, you're completely missing the point. And that should be something that's talked about a lot more. Like, all this effort going into, like, trying to prop up games like Digimon or Monster Hunter Stories, like, or even fucking Dragon Quest Monsters, like, it's not going to go anywhere. If anything, all that's doing is kind of establishing Pokemon's dominance over, like, this entire genre. Because every single time you do this, every single time you hype up a Monster Hunter Stories 3, all it does is just cement in the eyes of the general public just how much better Pokemon actually is. And it's only going to get worse going forward. As more and more people start to acknowledge that Pokemon is bigger than the Super Bowl, it is bigger than Call of Duty, it is bigger than Grand Theft Auto, like, more and more of these copes are going to fall apart. And there's just nothing more you can say about it.